Welcome to Mogul Talk, where wealth and lifestyle converge. We are mindset media dealing with business, social relevance, abundance, lifestyle, and spirituality. This is your time. This is your moment. And this is your host, Ms. Mogul, Charity Smith.
Hello, America, and literally around the world. This is Charity Smith. I am Miss Mogul. I am the host of Mogul Talk. Today launches a very special series in my heart and in my book, a very vital one. This week, we are hosting Ghana Week. Now, many of you know that I had the blessed privilege to travel to the continent earlier in this year and not only have a cultural immersion, but an economic development immersion as well. Well, in preparation of this series, I was looking for viable, important, relevant voices to bring to you from the continent to speak to those of us in the diaspora, not only about the economic opportunities in Ghana, but how do we connect to the land? How do we connect to the people? Everyone knows that you only do business with people you know and like, right? And so a lot of that has to do with how we emerge in the culture, how we show up in the world. And so I found this gentleman that I am so delighted to have on our show today. So let me tell you a little bit about who we have in the studio today. My guest is Mr. Tim Swain. As an internationally recognized poet, author, speaker, award-winning performer, and catalyst for social change, Tim Swain has been captivating audiences for over 17 years. For the past 15 years, he has headlined and been the keynote speaker for international venues in Mexico, Ghana, and here in the United States. He is a global citizen who is the co-founder and director of Anidaso 360, an organization that empowers and equips disenfranchised communities through education, economic, and social advancement. We are going to dive into that today, I promise you. In addition to this, the organization empowers young adults through cultural immersion trips to Ghana, through transcultural leadership experiences and exposure. Tim holds a bachelor's degree in communications, a master's of education from Texas State University. He was from my home state. We'll talk more about that. Also, he holds a master's of arts in theology and missions with a concentration in world Christianity from Ghana, Africa. He is an author who uses his powerful voice by infusing life-changing, inspirational messages in memorable, creative expressions. Tim Swain is also the inspiration behind Why I Write. It's an anti-bullying campaign in London. Totally. He's absolutely a global citizen. He has extensive experience in curating, innovating, and developing programs for countless universities, including Duke University, Texas State University, and Washington State University. Now, among all the organizations he's involved in the international space, he's also connected with CRU, the African Forum of Religion and Government, and Compassion International Ghana. Wow, what a litany of accomplishments there. So now, without further ado, come into the studio, Mr. Tim Swain. Welcome to Mogul Talk, sir.
Well, thank you so much for having me. You know, sometimes you don't realize how long your bio is until somebody reads it. And it's like, wow.
And you got to sit there and just, oh.
It's like, who are they talking about? Is that me? Wow.
Yeah.
So, but thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for taking the time to have a focus on Ghana. I think it's a very important conversation and exposure that a lot of people need. So thank you so much for having me today.
Absolutely. We've been trying to get these schedules together for quite some time. Time zones were at work.
It's true.
All of that stuff that happens in life and in real time. But I am a real believer, Mr. Swain, in divine providence. So I believe that things happen when they're supposed to happen, when they're aligned to happen. And I think now is the right time to host a voice like yours. So thank you again for being here on Mogul Talk. So when we started at the top of the show, I told the listeners about the trip that I took to Ghana. I always wanted to go to the continent. There's just, you see, even before I got there, I was like, there's something that's calling me to the land, right? And I didn't know really what it was. And sometimes I think we kind of dismissed that as something else. But my daughter gave me a statement that made absolute sense to me and made me go ahead and go forward with the trip. She said, Mommy, sometimes our DNA remembers what our mind does not.
Wow. That's powerful.
That's my young one.
Wow.
Okay. That young one, young woman at Howard University doing phenomenal things with NASA, but she is the quintessential woke young woman. And so we were talking about opportunities, because I've always had a global presence, but I wanted in philanthropy, but I wanted to now bring in the business aspect of that. But before we can do business, we have to understand people, and we have to know where people are coming from. And I started at the top of the show saying people do business with those they know and those they like. So in order to do business, you've got to get to know the people, right? And so that statement was very profound. Mommy, sometimes your DNA remembers what your mind does not. So that made sense to me. So I went ahead and booked the flight. And let me tell you, the experience there. So met with the chieftaincy, met with government officials, met with high-ranking business people there. And it's a beautiful people. But one of the things that really surprised me was the diversity in economic standing. It was jarring. So before we get into that, I want to know, what did you see? What was the catalyst for you? Now, that was my catalyst. What was the catalyst for you? You just shared with me, for all of those who are listening, who will be listening in Houston, this young man is from Mo City. You don't know what Mo City is unless you're from the region.
That's right.
Mo City is in the house today, all the way from Ghana, right?
I'm telling you.
But what was the catalyst for you? Leaving the city, we'll say Houston for those who are listening internationally.
Sure.
Most people know Houston. But what was the catalyst for you to pack up your bags and say, Ghana is all the way around the world, over 5,000 miles away, no doubt. What was that for you? What brought you to that place?
Yeah, that's a great question. And first of all, congratulations on you taking the courageous step to come to Ghana. I think that's beautiful and it's amazing. And a lot more people need to do that. For me, the short version is my first foot in Ghana was actually as a college student, as a part of a missions trip with an organization that particularly focused on Black communities. And so it was a Black group of missionaries that said, we got to go and reconnect people to Africa to learn more about their identity. And so that was transformative for me. It opened my eyes. It was a 7-week experience. It opened my eyes to the realities of God being bigger than Texas, as hard as that is, and being bigger than the United States. And so something in my heart at that time just kind of got regrafted to Ghana. I went again in 2013. 2014, I had a conversation with a friend, and we were talking about the status of Black men in America. And we said that we started looking at the transformational experiences in our lives. We said that, number one, it's our relationship with God that's been transformational. Number two, it's our relationship with the continent. And number three, we've learned how to navigate this U.S. system. We know how to get a job and stuff like that, but that's not enough. So we decided to just start taking Black people to Africa. And so we started off with a flagship program where we mobilized about 13 young men for a 5-week leadership experience. And throughout time, we just kept building on those programs to a 5-week, then a 2-week program that was co-ed, men and women of all ages, particularly focusing on people of African descent. That's our primary demographic. And in 2014, the catalyst, the real catalyst, one of the catalysts was, unfortunately, the death of Mike Brown. And if folks who are listening, they don't know who that is a young man who was killed by the police in Ferguson, Missouri, an unarmed Black man. And it was a spiraling of events that had been happening in our community for decades. But this particular incident hit the mainstream and was the beginning of a lot of mainstream incidents like this happening. I took a walk with the NAACP through small towns, one which included Rosebud, Missouri. The faces that I saw of the people that didn't look like me on the sidelines, the things that they were saying. Now, I wasn't born in the 60s, but I do remember those covers of the magazines that showed those individuals that had, the sticks and the bats and the dogs. And it looked just like that, except in real time. And right after that trip, where I felt like less than nothing, a vermin, a stain on the fabric of America, About 2 months later, I went to Africa again. And that trip was transformational because it showed me that in my own country, sometimes I'm treated less than a human being. But when I go to Ghana, I literally am living out King's vision in another land where I'm truly judged based off the content of my character and not the color of my skin. And it was that moment that I told my wife, I said, you know what? I think our destiny is in Ghana. Fast forward, some planning, replanning. 2019, during the year of return, December the 4th, to be exact, we stepped foot in Ghana to start our new lives.
Oh, okay. So that in and of itself will mess you up. If you have not gone through those doors, the doors of no return, we'll get a chance to talk about that. But you hit on something that was really profound, and I really want to bring light to it. I love the idea that your introduction to the continent was through a missions trip. So much of what we know about ourselves as a people has been through our faith and through our religion. Now, I'm going to go into some controversial places here, but this is the power of independent media. So if you don't like it, you can turn it off.
Let's go there. Let's go. Okay,
well, let's go.
I'm ready.
Already. I love that your introduction was through religion and faith because, again, so much of what we as a people, and we're not a monolithic people, but let's just say, as you know, the quote unquote stereotype would go, Black Southern Christian people, we didn't see ourselves in faith. We didn't see ourselves in God because the missionaries who colonized and brought religion to us did not look like us. And for so long, we've had to dig through their ideologies and interpretations of scripture, first of all, to find out who God really is, and then to find ourselves closer to God than we thought.
Yeah.
Are you following me so far?
I'm with you.
I love that it seems like there is a rewriting of the narrative, even with young Black men going back in the name of this missions trip, right? You're going back because of a faith-based organization as Black men back to the continent. There was a rewriting of the narrative even in that. So how do I take this faith that I've been given and connect it to this land? Where am I in this? And to have that kind of, again, rewriting. Do you understand where I'm going with this?
I can definitely see where you're going, and I'll say that.
How did you connect yourself again? What was that like?
I would say that, you know, what you're saying is true, particularly as it relates to the missionary movement in West Africa, as well as colonization in Africa, because when you look at the missionary movement, particularly of the 18th century, late 18th century, early 19th century, when you looked at how these missionaries from Europe brought their ideas here, what it did was it totally desecrated the culture. And what it did was it separated the African from himself and put him in position to model European values and notions of civility. And so the organization, I'm saying that because the organization that I was a part of is called the Impact Movement. The Impact Movement specifically was a Christian organization that wanted to merge African identity with Christianity so that it could produce leaders of African descent that were not just good at shouting and dancing, but that really dug deeper into understanding what's my calling in life, whether it be a plumber or a politician, whether it be a business professional, whether it be whatever it is, right? But how can I use the innovation and creativity that God has given me, knowing that a significant piece of our formation, particularly as Black people in America, is our African ancestry. And if we do not connect that piece back to the fabric of who we are, whether or not if you're a Christian, Muslim, whatever, but the fact that if you're born and raised in America and you're not reconnected with the fabric of your African identity, your African ancestry, then a piece is missing. So it did a great job at merging those two. And had it not been for that organization, honestly, I probably would have never gone to the continent. So I tell people, I'm not in a position where I'm like, you know, what people should or should not do, particularly as it comes to religion, or they shouldn't be doing that. All this is all bad, because had it not been for a missionary movement, I would have never stepped foot on the continent. But it was because of that, I believe, divine providence, right? That it opened my eyes so that I can build on the foundation that I was given in terms of exposure, connect with the person that I now call a business colleague and a friend, so that we can rewrite the narrative and say, okay, the missions model gave us the exposure, but now let's take the cultural insight that we have and the understanding. So now we can literally rewrite a curriculum that focuses on developing leaders of African descent in a holistic way, focusing on spiritual, culture, and professional development. And that's what we do.
And we are such a quote unquote spiritual people. So much of what I experienced while I was there on the continent was the spirituality of the continent. It's not always something that I ascribe to personally, but just this understanding that we seem to again have in our DNA, that we are a people made by a divine creator, and we're connected, interconnected. And I'm gonna call him because that's who I pray to, right? We are connected to him, and he's connected to us. And there is an identity there that was removed, but we are becoming acquainted with again, particularly us in the diaspora. I think one of the biggest outcomes of watered down or Europeanized Christianity is that it removed us from our faith, because we did not see ourselves there. We couldn't connect there. And particularly young generation. So I'm a Gen Zer. I'm guessing you around that same age point. But I'm a Gen Zer. My daughter is I'm a Gen Xer. She's a Gen Zer. Look, I wish, right? I'm a Gen Xer. She's a Gen Zer. So many of the young people have removed themselves from what we call Christianity. They did not see the logic. They didn't see their identity. It didn't make sense to them. It was no cultural connection there. So they forego their faith, which is the most real, the most alive part of themselves, forget about it, and only dwell on their logic. Now I'm preaching, right? But what I appreciate about this experience in Ghana is that now it gives us the opportunity, the ecosystem now, to start having conversations about how does my culture and my self-expression and my faith in God now merge for a complete identity for me. Does that make sense?
Wow. Yeah, it does.
So
it does.
That's powerful, that your introduction, for me, that's powerful. And particularly around the time where we're going into the climax of what I call, they had Bloody Sunday? A Bloody Monday?
Something like that. 60s. I'm not sure,
Yeah, with John Lewis. We saw a bloody 2020.
Where
all of the social injustices were happening. But we also saw this. We saw people adorn themselves with courage again. So yes, it was the Michael Browns, and then it was the George Floyds and the Sandra Blands, and all of those atrocities, those hashtags that came up. Where Black blood was shed. And I find it interesting that that's kind of the ecosystem where you're now having this experience to return to Ghana. Talk to me about what it was like for you returning to Ghana in the midst of all of this that's happening here in the US to now leave, in a sense, all of that behind, come to Ghana, same skin, same name, same pedigree, but now in Ghana as a Black man. How do you now reconcile your experiences in the US with what's happening with you in Ghana?
Wow.
What mind game does that play on you?
Yeah, that's an incredible question. And it's one that I've definitely thought about. And I'll say that it has transitioned throughout time. As I said, my first exposure to Ghana was in 2007. And the feeling that I had initially was anger when I came back, because I was like, I felt like I've been duped, hoodwinked, run them up.
Hoodwink, bamboozle.
I'm telling you, I felt like that because I felt like, why did I have to travel 5,000 miles to find myself?
Wait, stop. Wait. That's important. That's important. And this is why I bring that up. So much of what we need to discover, I don't think we'll find in this ecosystem. I think you had to go there.
No, I had to. I definitely had to, and so. But me at that time, I didn't have a great ecosystem of Black theologians, cultural experts to process with, and I was angry But then let's just say fast forward to when we actually relocated here more permanently.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, it was very weird because you know how you work so long for something, and when it finally happens, you're like, "Is this really happening?" Like you know, because we was working towards it for like several years. It took a lot of planning, especially talking about relocating.
Sure.
And when it finally happened, it was like, "Is this really happening?" But I felt like it was. I'll just say it's interesting because, you know, this is around the time when coronavirus had transformed the world, and then the Black Lives Matter movement resurfaced, particularly around the deaths of Eric Garner and so many other brothers and sisters. And I think that I felt the pain, but to be honest with you, because I did not live in the environment where I had to go to work around people that didn't look like me and code switch and smile and like, so I didn't have to do that. So I didn't feel the intensity of it, but I did feel the pain and the reality. And I think what it did was it reminded me why it's so important that we as people of African descent get exposure to the continent, because what it did was it gives you a sense of hope. Because if you're living in the States, you feel like, I had a guy tell me one time as a child, when he watched cartoons, right, the Flintstones was the past. For younger folks who may not know, the Flintstones is a cartoon that talked about the Stone Age or something like that. Yeah. He says, a black person, he didn't see himself in the past. Ever. He looked to the future, it was the Jetsons. He wasn't in the future either. So he never saw himself in the past or the future of America. So what it does was it sometimes produces a sense of hopelessness when you look at the present and you're still being killed, you're still being violated, mutilated, oppressed, and repressed. But when you come to a place like Ghana or any other place in the diaspora, it does two things. Number one, it makes you recognize that you have problems, yes, but other people in the world got problems too now. Because Ghana is not a utopia. There's some real stuff happening here.
Yeah, for sure,
But it also gives you options. So in the event you want to at least get away, you got a place to go to. If you want a place where, let me just take my kids to a place where they can just grasp a piece of their sanity, where they can just relax and chill out and not have to worry about being black. Because the thing is, when you come to Ghana, you actually cease being black. Honestly, you're honest. Yeah, you cease being black. You really are more identified as an American if you come from America than a black person. But to release and leave at JFK or Dulles Airport, blackness as a social construct is indescribably liberating. And you cannot experience it until you experience it. You can read, and what it does for you psychologically is it makes you tap into, I think, cognitive places where you feel free to live outside of that racial construct, which is proven to be psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually damaging.
Put a pin right there. That's a great place to now take a quick break. I want to come back and now talk to you about the psychological impacts of not just on you and your transformation into Ghana, but how do you lead young leaders now? People who are thinking about coming to the continent to live long term. How do we now emerge ourselves into the social construct of Ghana to make it a successful launching pad for us now and in the future? So we're going to have that discussion when we come right back.
Are you ready to break out and break through? Wait no longer. Charity Smith, known as Ms. Mogul, has created a breakthrough course and mastermind called the Mogul Method for multidimensional leaders wanting to harness their creative power and release their next big idea, transforming their performances, culture, and leadership. A highly sought-after media personality, business, and transformative leader, Ms. Mogul enraptures her audience, taking them on a journey of personal and performance discovery with laughter, candor, a biting wit, and over 20 years of business acumen and leadership. Go to www.youcancreateyourown.economy.com now to awaken the mogul in you.
And we are back. Now, Tim, before we went to break, I don't even know if you were completely aware, but you said a mouthful when it comes to being able to leave your blackness on one continent and emerge in another space, on another continent, Well, that's no longer the barrier. If anything is a barrier, again, it's language and it's being American, but the social construct of being Black is removed. And let me tell you why that's so powerful. And I really want to talk to you about it. So much of what we experience as glass ceilings here in the US has to do economically, has to do with the Black social economic construct. And when you put on top of that sexism, for all of the women who are out there, then it brings on a totally different dynamic. And to have the opportunity where resources are the only issue, or being American is the only issue, but you being Black is not the issue. You said it was liberating, but I want you to go a little bit deeper into that. So now that we have this opportunity with the 2019 Open Doors, the door of return. And let me tell you, it was so powerful. You talked about your experience, but I went there, and Tim, when I stepped on the grounds, I'm not a person that believes in, again, a lot of, crazy stuff, but to put my bare feet on the same stones that somewhere my ancestors from Negro land and Jubilee, came through those same doors with a hope and a future of a return. And I get emotional every time I talk about it. Yeah. Some of them died in the waters. Some of them made to the continent, but they didn't make it back home. And for me to be the answer to that prayer, don't tell me that Yah doesn't hear. I honestly believe that my return going back, because they changed the name. It's the door of return now. Yeah. It's no longer the door of no return. I'm getting chills talking about it. It's now because of what the president established in 2019, the end of 400 years of oppression. We can talk about that another time. But the end of that 400 years of oppression of Black people in the diaspora, there was an end call to it. And so the name of that place was changed from the door of no return to the door of return, to put my feet back on the same stones where my ancestors were told there would be no return. And for me to come back as a successful businesswoman, an accomplished businesswoman, an educated woman, a political, all of these accolades, and to come back now and say, I'm the answer to your prayer. I'm back. And not only am I back, but I can come now and build a home for the next generation. Wow. That is, God, every person of color, let me be specific, every person of African descent in the diaspora needs to have that experience. What was that like for you?
You said it. Honestly, I'm not trying to be funny, but I think what you said surmised the reality of it. I think that when you look at the totality of it, like I said, Ghana is not utopia at all. But when you look at the things that money cannot buy, those are the things that you find here. I was having a conversation with someone the other day and just saying, like, it's not just, it's not just the police that I'm afraid of, but it's people who look like me, because of the hostility of the environment in the U.S. Like if I go to the wrong gas station in the wrong time of night and I look at somebody in the wrong way, it may turn into an altercation. I may get shot. If I cut somebody off in traffic, that person may be mad at me and I may get shot. So it's the things like the hyper violence and the hyper vigilance that you need just to survive sometimes in the U.S. Where like if I'm in Ghana and I step on somebody's shoe, at most it'd be like, oh, sorry. And that's it. Yeah. Like there's no thought of like this person. Yeah, right. But there's, exactly. But there's no thought that this could turn into a violent altercation. Yeah. And generally crime does exist here like any other place in the world. But typically speaking, when you talk about violent crimes, like that stuff doesn't exist to the degree and it's not as pervasive in a lot of places in the States. It's not like that here. So there's a relative sense of peace. I also think that, I have a son. And so having a son and not having to have conversations with him now about what it means to be Black, is truly invaluable. Like somebody bought me, they did it. I appreciate them. They brought some books from the U.S. and it was books around like children's books that teach you how to respond to the police and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which is necessary, but I'm thinking like my son doesn't have to read this in Ghana.
Oh, wait, stop. Wait. Think about the gift and think about the paradigm that's being formed in your son now. Because I have a 12-year-old and I'm thinking about, when does he become a threat to society? Yeah. When does my baby stop being my baby and now become a threat to society? And, we have to talk with our children about sex, and we should be talking to them about their faith and about their money. And if you're African American, you have to have the police talk. And now it's not just the boys, it's the girls too. We have to have that talk. But knowing now the weight of that responsibility isn't as pervasive on your shoulders and on your wife's shoulders. Sure, you'll have to have a conversation, but the angst, so many of our people walk around with PTSD. I mean, there's studies that have been, studies have been performed on us, and it doesn't matter where you fall in the socioeconomic strata. When you see the blue and red lights come on, your blood pressure elevates, male or female. Yeah. And having the liberty for your son to just play. That's it. Just play.
Yeah.
Child, think that, and somebody may be looking at the show, Tim, and like, what's the big idea with playing? Yeah. Unless it has been threatened and unless it's been taken away from your child, you don't understand the value of just play. And being a child, and going back to what you were saying about your friend, when he talked about the past and not seeing himself in the Flintstones, looked at the future, don't see yourself in the Jetsons. When you have the opportunity to play in an environment that's familiar and nurturing and looks like you, you can imagine a future that now looks like you. You can paint a future that looks like you, right?
Yeah.
So that's the gift of having the opportunity to come to Ghana. That's the gift of being there, right?
And I know the thing is, it's not just, even for people who are watching, it's not just some kind of imaginary feeling, but there's research on things like ACE, right? ACE, adverse childhood experiences, right? That talks about when a child experienced trauma and how that impacts him psychologically, cognitively, and that impacts even physiologically who that person is. So can you imagine those young children right now seeing themselves, their uncles, their people who look like their mama, their daddy, their uncles being killed on television by the authority figures, and even growing up in environments to where, I used to work with the youth in Indianapolis, and you talk about adverse childhood experiences, you talk about kids that had to experience all levels of trauma in terms of violence, sexual violence, all types of stuff right at a very young age, and what that does to you psychologically and the type of trauma that it creates. Dr. Joy DeGroot, I believe I pronounced her name correct, but she talks about post-traumatic slave syndrome.
Yes.
And she talks a lot about that. So the reality is you have the post-traumatic slave syndrome with the current day trauma and the adverse childhood experiences that kids are going through. And so it's really a matter of, when I look at the future and I look at my son, it's like, I want to be able to provide a life for him to where I can't shelter him from the realities and adversities of life. But let's just be real. Let's bring it home for somebody watching. If you had the money, let's say you live in an area right now that's crime ridden, and you got the money to move your child to an area that's not crime ridden, it's not going to be a thought in your mind. If you can move their child to where they're going to get the best education, be loved, be nurtured, when they get into that classroom, they can develop friendships, don't have to worry about somebody breaking in your house. It is a no-brainer. You're going to get out that environment. So when we talk about the racial trauma, the reality is we have to reconnect with the continent and with the diaspora, because what it does is it opens up new worlds for our children to where they can now see themselves a part of the future of these places, and they can just simply lay down the burden of being Black. And there's research, as you said, there's research that says that, listen, a lot of issues, particularly for Black folks in America, is related to racism. Facts. Economic. You talk about redlining. You talk about housing discrimination.
That's
we
my
can go
area.
on and on.
Real estate. It's a real thing. It's
It's
a
a
real
real
thing.
thing. You listen, you get in your house to praise, and the people's skin is chocolate, it's going for 85,000. The people's skin who not chocolate, the same house is going for 285. This is real stuff. So this is not stuff we're making up.
Right.
So, and for how hard you work, the thing is this: I don't believe that everybody needs to move to Africa. I don't believe that. But I do believe that everybody should experience it, particularly talking about people of African descent. I do believe everybody should experience it to give themselves options.
That's good.
That's the difference. Give themselves options. So that I look at it like this. I lived in Indianapolis and we had what's called snowbirds. You know, people who they leave the cold weather to go to the warm weather, you know, in the wintertime.
Yeah.
I think we need blackbirds. So that's when you get tired of racism, you go back home to cool off and recenter, and you come on back to deal with it another day if you don't feel like leaving. But you can cool off and just fly away for a little bit. Come on back home for a little bit to recharge. Come on back to Wakanda.
Not Wakanda forever.
Come on and recharge and recharge.
Tell me about Anidaso 360. This is a great place to talk about hope, right?
Yeah.
What was
the
genesis of this organization? What's its mission? And what are you doing now with this wonderful organization?
Yeah, so our vision is to revitalize disenfranchised communities. And the way we started was, as I said, it was a kitchen conversation between a colleague of mine, now a colleague, then a friend. We both experienced Ghana together in 2007. It changed our lives. We stayed connected, and we were having a conversation just like this, Ms. Mogul, about Black America. And we both worked in higher education for a while. He's a PhD holder now, doing a lot of great things in community psychology, particularly around African-American immersion experiences. But we talked about all the problems facing Black America, and we said that if we walk away from this conversation and we do nothing, then we're just as much a part of the problem as anybody else. And so we did. I don't recommend this, but we funded the whole trips, most of the trips ourselves, like over $20,000, paying for these young Black boys to go to Africa. I don't recommend that, but we did it, and we just knew we had to do something. And that's where we started. We started with, let's just mobilize young Black men to the continent for 5 weeks, and let's give them a true leadership experience with a rites of passage at the end. And so the rites of passage was a very intense leadership model that was kind of built a little bit off the military, a little bit off of fraternities, sororities, how they do their kind of Hell Week in the military. You know, listen, Marine Corps, you have your crucible, and it's a time where you basically test everything that you know, and you come out of it as a leader. And so we did that, and then we naturally progressed into a 10-day experience for professionals who cannot take away 5 weeks, who still want to experience some of the same amazing, incredible things that Ghana has to offer. And so now, you know, we've been doing that in addition to just mobilizing people back and forth to the continent. Our focus is really on empowering our people. And so we also have curriculum that we have developed for 7th through 9th graders that's centered on character and leadership development, that is focused on Pan-African leadership. So we don't start with 1619. We start with way beyond 1619, looking at the Songhai Empire, the Mali Empire, the Ashanti Empire, way before colonization was a thing in the modern world, so that we can show our young students who they were before this really small period of time called particularly the transatlantic slave trade.
Yes.
And so they can see themselves again, right? They can see themselves in the future, contextualize their present, and then see themselves in the past, contextualize their present, and see themselves in the future for who God has created them to be. So we do those things, and we're just continually trying to add to our programming list. But those are a few things that Anidaso does.
So my son is signing up. So just let me know how we do that. And that's a whole other conversation. I've got to get the young king there. But I love that you all are kind of the elders, the tour, not really tour guides. It's the council of elders. That's kind of what I did something very similar for my son when he turned 11, right? 11 is a pivotal age. We all study the spiritual ramifications of 11, and of course 12, particularly in the Hebrew faith, it is profound. But what it essentially is a time when the young man is about to enter into his manhood. He's surrounded by elders who give him economic counsel, cultural counsel, spiritual counsel, marital and relational counsel, educational counsel. Those were the 5 pillars that I surrounded him with. And it sounds like it's some of the same kind of thinking. We can't really see ourselves in the future if we don't have a fully developed, right, contextual sense of self in the past. It's that old
Yes.
thing, you don't know where you're going if you don't know where you've been. You've
Yes.
got to know where you've been past the transatlantic slave trade into now. And I love that you all have curated this experience. And I figured we were going to run out of time, and we're darn near close to it. But tell us now, what is in your mind? And I just want you to kind of go into your mind's imagination, or just into yourself, and answer this question. What do you believe the impact of the return to Ghana will be? If all things are equal, and if people who are listening to this show take seriously the opportunity to return, what do you think is possible for us economically, educationally, spiritually? What's just possible in seeing ourselves in a new context?
Wow. Wow.
What's possible?
Ooh,
and I
wow.
know the question is this big, and I know we have this much time, but what's possible for us if we take advantage of this opportunity, this gift that is, because let's be honest, not every African country has opened their doors for the return.
Yeah, it's true.
But this, this is open.
I think what's possible is to be able to do what we are attempting to do in the U.S. with the freedom to do it. I think in a nutshell, right? When we talk so much about Black Wall Street, but there's so many Black Wall Streets that existed. Not necessarily Black Wall Street, but so many Black communities that had their own dollar circulating and things like that all across, the United States. Even when you look at post, quote unquote, the end of slavery and the amount of money that those slaves amassed that actually funded, what is the federal bank, but that's a whole nother conversation. The reality is, when you look at what we are attempting to do in the States, which in essence, build our own nationhood. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to build our own nation within a nation. But it's not possible. It's like if I came to your house that you own, Miss Mogul, and I say, you know what? I'm going to do it this way. You're going to say, really? Well, here's the door, and let the doorknob hit you with a good Lord split you, because that's not your vision for your house.
Right.
And I'm not saying that we can't take advantage of the opportunities that are there in the U.S. I'm not saying I'm not anti-American. I'm not any of that. I think there's a lot of opportunity. I think there's a lot of opportunities there. But I think that when you get to the place, just practically, when you hear people talking about we need to have our own military and all, what? Come on, let's be serious. Why would a nation allow a group of people, regardless of the color, to come against it? A house divided itself shall not stand. So nobody's going to allow you to have your own military and occupy land that wasn't meant for that. But I think that what we're looking for in essence is this. We're looking for an opportunity as people to simply live and exist in the image that God has created us and be productive members of society. At the core level, that's what we're looking for. And what I believe beyond the shadow of a doubt is you can do that in places in the diaspora, particularly Ghana. You can come and take those resources from the U.S., from the business that you're building, from your high-paying job, and not have to worry about working the rest of your life and not receiving nothing. But you can take those resources and build a life for you in Ghana that you can pass on to your children's children and not have to worry. Here's the difference. You don't have to worry that the color of their skin is going to be the most significant aspect that determines whether or not they're successful or whether they fail. That's not there anymore. And as truth be told, as long as you got the money in Ghana, you can do whatever you want to do, honestly.
That is the truth.
So
as long as you have the money, you can do just about anything.
You can do whatever you want to do. So you work so hard in the U.S., and it's not just about racism, but it's about the system in itself. You work so hard in a system where, for my example, my background is higher education. You go to a private school, get $100,000 in loans, you get a liberal arts degree in psychology, your average income is $30,000 before taxes. You're never going to pay off the $100,000 in loans. That don't include the interest. But imagine if you had the business acumen to be able to take the education that you have, build a business, or even work and earn income, save, not try to floss on everybody, but have something better in mind where you can build a house, not even to live. But what if you just built a house in Ghana or bought one for $40,000 that sits 2 miles from the beach? So when you want to take a vacation, you can come here, take a vacation, But and when you're not here, you can Airbnb it out.
I was about to, you in my space, because that's something we've actually been thinking about at my company and as a family, having a vacation spot there so that we can have that opportunity by the beach, right? The most beautiful, pristine beaches are in Ghana, and just having that opportunity. You're about to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that we really need to learn how to take advantage of opportunities. I think a lot of us don't know how to see opportunities because we're so oppressed. And listen, I'm not trying to talk against things like calling out racism, calling out cultural appropriation, but sometimes we be begging for a seat at somebody else's table when God said, "I'm giving you everything you need to build your own." But it comes with knowing purpose. That's the thing. Some people are built for being in an environment where they take the heat so they can be the first person to open the door for a lot of other people. But that's not most of us. Most of us are taking the heat because we feel like we ain't got options and we don't know what else to do. And we don't know how to recognize an opportunity. Let me just be very frank. What's happening right now in Ghana, particularly in the real estate arena, is ridiculous. Mm-hmm. There are people, and here's the thing: there's other nationalities that are coming to Ghana and doing what we're saying. Yo, people need to be doing this for us. They're coming, they're buying homes, they're buying land, they're renting it out to us who come for a visit or for a holiday.
The diaspora, yes.
But they're not African, they're not Ghanaian. And we complain about that, but here's the opportunity for us to do it now. The first thing people need to do that I highly recommend is, and I talk about this on my YouTube channel, which is simply my name, Tim Swain. The first thing you need to do is do like Miss Mogul did. Take a visit. Go and see for yourself. Go talk to people like you did. Go have conversations. And then from there, it becomes more of a reality. Because I get it. Like if I transition back to before I was living in Ghana, Africa seemed like this far away, distant, I don't know what's going on. But when you do like you did, you can see the reality. You see, there are buildings here. There are cars here.
You went into your Ghanaian accent. There are buildings here.
Yeah. So, it comes and goes. So like you can see that it's around. So, but it just gives you an alternative perspective to learn how to take advantage of opportunities and realize that the last thing I'll say is this. I think some of us, because we're so oppressed in America, particularly Black folks, we don't recognize the privilege that we have, honestly, as American citizens. Let's talk about economically. You want to build a home in Ghana? You're going to go to the bank. You know how much it's going to cost you in interest? 25% on the dollar. And you're going to have to put down sometimes 20, 30, 40, 50%. Now, compare that to the States, to where you can get funded in the States 4 or 5% interest.
Yeah.
So we have to learn how to recognize opportunities and even the privilege that we have as Americans. We don't like to admit it, especially Black folks, but there's a privilege that comes with being an American citizen.
I'm glad you brought that up. And it's called leverage.
Leverage, that's what it is.
It's called leverage. And I think a great way to just kind of encapsulate all of this is going back to that statement you made, being able to recognize the opportunity, not being so clouded and so focused on what's wrong in the environment that you don't see what's right, and where you don't see an opportunity. It's kind of like that old analogy of putting a frog in hot water. If the frog is thrown in hot water, it'll immediately jump out. But if the frog keeps acclimating to the heat and the temperature, it'll stay there so long, it'll bake and it'll cook to death, right? And so many of us have done that in this environment. We just acclimate and we just keep adjusting and readjusting, and we don't see this is the opportunity to get out. Take what you have, and let's be honest, that hot water is motivation, is it not, for the frog to get out the pot?
I'm telling you.
So what's your motivation to jump out the pot, to make the leap, the proverbial leap? So I love what you're saying. We have run out of time. We have never run out of content. I would love to have you back and talk more about what you're seeing in the landscape economically, and how we in the diaspora now can start adjusting the mindset, because even the African mindset, right? The Hebrew mindset, because so many of the people in Africa are Hebrew. I didn't know that until I got to the continent. That's a whole nother conversation. But there's a different mindset that has to come with being on the continent. Business is done differently.
Yeah,
People
Charlie, I'm
take
telling
their
you.
time, they shake hands, and you got to eat some fufu, and you got to have some yam and ram, and we
I'm
got to
telling
know
you.
about you before we talk to you about these vast opportunities of land acquisitions. You got to sit down and have some fufu with us, and we got to see, do you eat your fufu with your fingers or with a fork? And that'll let them know if they're going to do business with you or not, right? So we got you back. We lost our connection a little bit.
Yeah,
But
it's true.
go ahead.
Yeah, actually was
Awesome.
going out. I'm not sure what was going on, but
Okay. It's just a little bit of a connection issue, but you know, being in Ghana, a whole continent away, we can expect just a little bit of a delay right there. But Mr. Swain, this is a great place for us to wrap up the conversation, and hopefully you have a good connection. Are you still connected with me there, sir? You
yeah,
still
can you
good?
hear me? Can you
I
hear
can
me?
hear you. I can hear you.
Okay.
If you could leave those of us who are in the diaspora one pearl of hope, one pearl of hope, what would be that pearl of hope you'd leave us with right now?
I believe the pearl of hope I would leave with people is knowing that God has really created us to live a life where when we are connected with Him, we can fulfill the purpose that He has for us. And a part of that is really seeking and actively going back to reconnecting with the ancestry in which He's created us in. And when we do that, I'm telling you, opportunities open. So in other words, God ain't done yet.
Yay!
And there's hope. There's hope outside of the U.S.
Oh, that's
You
good.
know, you don't have to die there your whole life. The world is big. It's big. It's a big place.
It's a big place, but something about it, when you come home to Africa, you really do come home to a sense of community. At least that's what I felt. I really did feel a sense of community. How do people find you and connect with you and all the awesome work you're doing there on the continent and literally around the world?
Yeah, definitely. So people can just connect with me the best way, social media or YouTube. It's the same thing across all platforms. It's just simply Tim Swain. My first name is Tim, T-I-M. Last name is Swain. It's like S-W-A-I-N, like Twain, but put an S in front of it. And I have a YouTube channel that's dedicated to providing information and different aspects about Ghana. And so all the social media is the same thing, Tim Swain.
Awesome, awesome. Mr. Swain, it has been I'll say it as Les Brown said, my plum pleasing pleasure to host you today. Yeah, I did it. But it has been my plum pleasing pleasure to have this very candid and open and authentic conversation with you. And thank you for being a trailblazer, for showing us what's possible. If we just jump in the water and swim, it doesn't overtake you. Sometimes you can surf on it, right? And if you really walking in purpose, you can walk on it. That's a whole nother conversation. I'm not gonna mess with that. But there comes a time when even walking on water is possible. You're showing us how to do that. Thank you for all that you're doing with our men, with showing our men how to be men, reconnecting our men with their culture and our narrative and our language and our very being. I appreciate also just you being this caretaker, if you will, this guardian of what's possible for us in the diaspora. Thank you again for all the work you're doing. And I promise you, this will not be the last time we have this conversation. 2.0 is coming up.
Well, thank you as well. It's been my delectable delight to talk to you on this day.
Okay, come on, delectable. Our best to your family.
All
blessings upon increased blessings to your wife, your son, all that you're doing there. Keep the doors open. We'll be back real soon. All right.
All righty. Have a blessed day.
Thank you, sir. And thank all of you for joining us today. Listen, today's conversation has been something else. Mr. Swain is full of information. Please make sure that you go to his all of his platforms. Everything is Tim Swain. Social media, YouTube, you can find him at Tim Swain. Also, LinkedIn, I believe, is another place that you find him, which is where I did. You all, it's important that we reconnect our economics, our culture, and our faith to who we really are. This is just the beginning of our conversations. There's more to come. Stay tuned next week where I'll have another guest, and we'll be talking to you all about everything that's possible on the continent of Africa, specifically the country of Ghana. It's been my pleasure to host you today. Stay tuned next week. Again, another wonderful conversation coming up real soon. Blessings to you all. I'll see you next week.
Thank you for watching. Connect with us on our fan page on Facebook, Master Your Morning with Ms. Mogul, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Mogul Life TV. And visit our website, youcancreateyourown.economy.com and mommyscreatingeconomies.com. Are you ready to break out and break through? Wait no longer. Charity Smith, known as Ms. Mogul, has created a breakthrough course and mastermind called the Mogul Method for multidimensional leaders wanting to harness their creative power and release their next big idea, transforming their performances, culture, and leadership. A highly sought-after media personality, business and transformative leader, Ms. Mogul enraptures her audience, taking them on a journey of personal and performance discovery with laughter, candor, a biting wit, and over 20 years of business acumen and leadership. Go to www.youcancreateyourown.economy.com now to awaken the mogul in you.